Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episodes of Instinct, as well as the season finale of Deception. Like always, if I'm talking about something that you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include a time when I start talking about each of the respective shows. So, for example, if you want to hear what I said about this week's episodes of Instinct, you can skip to what I say about the season finale of Deception. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is this week's episodes of Instinct. Great episodes. If you are curious, I'm going to break this down episode by episode just because of the whole like police procedural aspect to it. So I'm just going to do it like that. Obviously, the first episode dealt with a lady named Ramin getting shot. And then it kind of spirals into this whole situation of like, oh, was it a hate crime? Especially because of the way the internet is. And it's like there were actually 3 other attacks, which I guess in this whole situation, it's just one of those things where it's like everyone ended up drawing conclusions because there were 3 separate things. There's also a mosque getting burnt down, but those all turned out to be unrelated situations. It was actually kind of an interesting twist in the episode because at first it seems like it's this dude named Troy who served in the military. At first it's like, oh, because the landlady's kind of like, oh, he's got PTSD, but it's like, no, he actually has schizophrenia. Like, Dylan's the only one kind of giving him the benefit of doubt. It's that situation of like, obviously the differences between Lizzie and Dylan. Dylan kind of pulled those more from his instinct, whereas Lizzie is like, no, give me the hard facts information. It's like, we can't just like, decide someone's innocence or guilt. We can't jump to those conclusions. We got to gather the evidence and see what the evidence said. But obviously Dylan, just based on like his way of his brain, what psychology and stuff like that, he, human behavior and stuff like that, he's like, I don't see Troy being. It's also interesting because I really love that whole bit between him and the landlord lady, because like Lizzie and her have a connection, and she's like, oh yeah, don't you remember? She's like, yeah, but I wasn't talking to you, I was talking to your friend here. It's like, and Dylan's being all charming and stuff like that, kind of being all flirty. And it's like, he's like, oh, but a lady like you shouldn't have to worry about losing so much. I mean, it's like, oh, you've just got so much. And you just see Lizzie just dogging like Dylan, just kind of like, shut up. And it's just, he's so into him. I was almost halfway expecting her just to cut the conversation off being like, oh yeah, Dylan, how's your husband doing? Just so that she could kill the flirtation. But I guess it's like, at the end of the day, it kind of helped them get further in the case and stuff like that. Like him being all flirty with her son. I guess it helped in the end. But because the sad circumstances around that is we end up finding out because of the nature of the case and stuff like that. Even Dylan getting the case was specifically, the mayor was like, oh, our everyone kind of refers to him as a shiny new toy because it's like, oh, she wants to put him on this case and stuff like that. Because it's like, oh, we need to rush and get this done as soon as possible before it turns into a situation where people kind of get super pissed. Like it happens a little bit in the episode where you kind of see like people kind of jumping at each other's throats. It's like we're in this neighborhood together, but just one little thing kind of sparks kind of that bad side of a lot of people. So that's what they're trying to avoid. But because of that, like you have like Jasmine being like, yeah, we need to shut the case. Like, what are you talking about? Like, we don't know for sure that Troy did it because obviously Dylan doesn't feel it in his gut, his instincts. But for Lizzie, it's like, well, no, we haven't interrogated the dude. This is still our case. We haven't really gotten all the information yet, but everyone was just so quick to try and shut the case down. Especially because the case wasn't theirs anymore. It was the hate crime unit's case, but it was still that situation. Like Lizzie, obviously from a professional standpoint, it's like, I don't like this because it's like, hey, let me do my job. It's like, we tried all we can do, because it's like, it's something that came up between her and Charlie, or the whole aspect of like, cops aren't supposed to change the world. That's just not who they are. It's just kind of like you're there to find out the truth until, in this particular case, it's like the case is taken from me. And you can see it just frustrate his Dylan because there's a whole aspect of, because it's a common complaint he has with it. It's because of this whole situation. It's almost like politics that kind of get in the way. It's like, no. Obviously, it's not this, but it's like, I'm not being. It's like almost having your hands tied behind your back. You can see things from a different point of view, but just because it's like evidence and stuff like that, your gut instinct aren't enough. Probably in the CIA, it would probably meant a lot more, probably because they're kind of probably more fast and loose with that type of situation. But in this kind of structured law enforcement situation, which isn't to say the CIA isn't just, it's like I said, a different set of rules. It's a different rodeo all on its own. And just being who Dylan is, that's just the most frustrating aspect of the job. But like I said, even Lizzie agreed, because to the point, like, she helped Troy out by like covering his handcuffed hands with her jacket, because even she didn't want him to kind of be, because even she wasn't 100% sure that he did it, so that's why she was doing that. So, but what I liked about the whole case was the little twist where in actuality it was a landlady who did it, because I wasn't expecting that. I like what triggered this all, because Dylan remembered his first time hunting with his dad. His first kill was completely by accident, because he was trying not to hit the animal, but the bullet ricocheted and hit. So basically, the landlady, she's basically trying to, because this all revolves around that business dude, Brett Maxton. He's buying up all these properties and stuff like that, and she's trying to sell her building, but she can't because she still has Troy there. He's also like, you know, a vet, so a lot of people that she'd go to about getting him kicked out won't be on her side. They're like, no, like under his circumstances, he's entitled to stay here. So she basically wanted to cause some trouble, but basically because she's not a well-armed person, she has no experience with the gun, the bullet just happened to ricochet and hit. It was just kind of, she was a terrible shot. It's all that was. She wasn't trying to shoot Ramin in the first place. It was just kind of like, hey, I just sucked and messed up. It's just kind of like, wow. I guess it kind of makes sense too, because it was like she was so active in the crimes too. It's kind of interesting because actually her shoes ended up being heavy evidence against her. I thought that was kind of pretty neat. How like the shoes that Dylan kind of remarked on earlier on in the episode, like, oh yeah, she's wearing them. Maybe that's what made her decide to throw them away, because Dylan took notice of them. Maybe that's why, or maybe it's just a different pair of shoes she had that looked exactly the same. I'm more so thinking like it had to be the exact same pair, because she had tar underneath it, and it's just kind of interesting that the evidence was like right there in front of it. We also learned that Dylan doesn't deal with heights, because there was that episode a little while back where he was trying to help that dude who ended up, you know, killing himself at the end of the episode. But it's like they were pretty high up, but I guess it was different circumstances, adrenaline. Like I don't remember him kind of freaking out, but then he's just like, Lizzie's like, oh, you can go up there and check it. He's like, nah, I'll believe you. She's like, okay, so what? You sure you want to go? Oh my God, what? You're afraid of heights, aren't you? He's like, no, I just have a healthy, you know, respect for heights. And she's like, okay. He's like, please don't tell me we're going to, yep, we're going to the roof. And I love Dylan's reaction. He'd just be like, stay away. And she's like, I'm literally not even close to the edge. But it's like, no, let's talk about that. Oh, why did you say something? I literally just did. And she's like, come over. And he's just kind of like, okay. And just freaking out, which I can appreciate. You know, I am someone who also has a fear of heights too. So it's just kind of like, I was like, I feel you, Dylan. I feel you. It's just kind of interesting that the episode has such a twist like that. I thought that was such a neat touch. Other things that came up in the episode that I thought was so interesting was one, they had the dude, the stalker dude. I'm blanking on his name right now, but he works at the department now too. I was like, I figured that was going to be the case. Like, especially when he was asking Lizzie for help with the whole job situation because of his stalker background and all of that. And I was like, that's so good that he's there. I was like, oh, we get to see him from time to time. There probably won't be a lot. Maybe in the future we might see him more, but it's just kind of like a little introducing, like, oh yeah, I work here now. It's just like, and even Lizzie's like, wait, what? And there's also the other dude, the officer Zach. I thought that was incredible. He came up, he's like, oh my God, Lizzie, you're a legend. And she's like, wait, what? It's like, wait, you're off duty and you literally came here? Why? It's like, because there was a shooting. It's like, oh, like, you know, something Jasmine kind of touches on later on. It's like, you took such an interest in Zach because it's like, he's such an overachiever, just like you. Because I'm like, I almost started thinking Zach was the killer or something like that. Yeah, because I'm like, man, you are popping up all over the place. I mean, I guess you could make the same argument because it's kind of like the landlady want to be as part of the investigation and stuff like that, probably to see, or to kind of help them along with her narrative that she was trying to strike up. But it's just so interesting to me that Zach started popping up everywhere. Even they were like, hey, wait, how did you know we were here? He's like, no, I figured that the place that you would go most likely would be to talk to Brett Maxton. Then later on when they're on the roof, he's like, do you have a chip in Lizzie or something? Dylan says. He's like, no, I talked to another, because it's like, yeah, it's a little suspicious that you just keep popping up everywhere. It's like, no, he just turns out to be very overachieving and good at his job, you know, so. It's interesting enough. I'm kind of skipping around, but we do see him pop up in the next episode too. Like, because there's even this moment where Dylan was looking almost like, "Wait, what? And nothing was said about it. It's just kind of like even Dylan was like, "Wait, what? You're working here? Okay." It was just that, and just kind of moving on. I thought that was kind of pretty neat. But what I also liked about this episode is there is a whole hunting situation between Dylan and his dad. His dad offered, it's like, hey, come out and hunt with me. Apparently, that's one of the few things that they bond over. I thought it was kind of neat. I like the way Dylan phrased it, of being like, oh yeah, because at least with the hunting, it's like, oh, we can bond. Plus, it makes it so my dad's target is someone else instead of me. I was like, oh, that's sad, but I thought he put that in such a beautiful, elegant way. I also love in this episode we had Julian helping Dylan out. I thought Julian would have a bigger role in the case because apparently like Brett is someone that Julian plays squash with, and it's just like, okay, I need you to buy me time. Can't you just? He's like, I'll do this and that for you, Dylan, but compromising my game, never. I'm like, and also when that dude was kind of asking too many questions when Dylan was trying to break into Brett's locker, he's like, oh yeah, could you open it? And the guy was like, Dylan opened his out, and the dude was like, yeah, I'll go find someone. And it's like, that was an easy way to deal with that situation. So I thought that was kind of pretty neat. It is interesting that it was such a small work because I was like, wait, what? Oh, they have a connection. I was like, oh, that's so interesting. I was like, oh no, it just seems like specifically just squash, nothing else beyond that potentially. So I thought that was just kind of like a little fascinating thing. Ultimately, in the end, Dylan decided not to go on the hunting trip with his dad. It's a very complicated relationship, as we've already kind of established, because it's even something Andy was calling him out for, because it's like you're beating yourself down because it's, once again, like the whole frustration of the situation, like, oh, like I left the CIA and stuff like that, but like maybe I'm not very good at this point either, like doing this either. He's like, okay, you're literally trying to beat yourself up before you meet with your dad, and it's kind of like the worst time to do that when you're so low on yourself. He already has a lot to pick at you about. You're just going to give essentially more ammunition. So I thought that was kind of a neat thing. I mean, that ultimately ended up helping him solve things, ended up solving the case. Later on with Lizzie, it's like, how did you figure out? He was just kind of like instinct. It's kind of like, I don't know if that really classifies as instinct or not, but I guess maybe he didn't necessarily want to admit the situation. So I didn't realize that he had never actually told Lizzie that the whole hunting trip was with his dad. I completely missed that until she's like, oh, hey, it's with your dad? And it's like, oh, yeah, like that was kind of interesting. I thought she knew from the beginning it was for his dad, but nevertheless. Luckily, when it was all said and done, they were able to kind of help out Troy, and he was even thankful to him because it's like, yeah, they were the two people that didn't give up on him. So a big part of this episode was kind of about the whole, like, you don't have to kind of give up certain things. Like, Lizzie doesn't have to completely let go of the, like, can move on from the past because she's, because of that neighborhood in particular that they were working the case out of was like a neighborhood she was familiar with. It's one that she actually used to do her beat on. It's actually where her and Charlie met. They actually met at a specific place. I think it's called Stan's. And it's a whole conversation of like, idealism and stuff like that. And, Dylan calling Lizzie kind of cynical. So, but it's just kind of like you don't have to lose your idealism under these circumstances. So just that situation of, yeah, they look at things from a different point of view, but in the end they kind of come together and see eye to eye to a certain degree. So I thought that was kind of pretty neat for this episode. And obviously the next episode dealt with the whole situation with the dude in the suit ended up dying. I thought it was just kind of interesting, especially like when all the people because at first it's kind of like, oh, he just had an allergic reaction. It's like, no, apparently he was murdered. Someone put peanut. I thought that was so interesting too. Dylan was like, this is some peanut compound. Lizzie's like, how do you know that? And he's like, because I'm allergic too. I was surprised she didn't have much of a reaction because she's like, oh, okay. Because it's like you literally, I guess you wouldn't know it until you tasted it. But I think it's kind of suspect to be tasting suspicious substances in something in a suit related to a guy that died. So I think you wouldn't do that because you don't know what it is, especially under these circumstances. Once again, another interesting thing we found out about Dylan. First, about you being afraid of heights. Now we find out you're allergic to peanuts. That's kind of interesting. And him just using the EpiPen on himself like that. So I was like, wow. Like I said, it did just kind of like, all right, back to investigating. I was like, okay. I'm surprised Lizzie didn't chew him out. Like, don't do something crazy like that. Like, but I guess it was such a quick thing that it wasn't that big of a deal. I guess he was holding an EpiPen at the time, but nevertheless. So basically, it turns out none of the people that he works with were behind it. Him, along with another dude named Larry, died, and things started picking up. There's even a lady later on who was potentially a victim in all of this. And it starts looking like, okay, so we have a serial killer here going about creative ways of killing people, like messing with their kind of vices in a sense, planting the compound in the suit. Larry's cigarettes were messed with, and this lady, Nancy, her insulin was messed with. kind of like up the dose to the point that would have killed her. So it's like, okay, so we got a serial killer, but it's like, oh, what's the connection? But then, Dylan went to Julian and found out some very interesting information. Apparently, this is connected to the CIA. I was like, wow, is the CIA knocking people off? It's like, why? Why would they do? And it's like, oh, so I can only assume it was a situation that the CIA like had interest in, but probably weren't directly. I mean, it turns out that this wasn't some serial killer. This was actually an assassin with because all these people were actors who were connected to a film that they recorded back in Morocco years ago. And it turns out that this is all about, because apparently that wasn't like, that filming was just a front for the fact is that there is it was a propaganda video meant, like the actors were like, they thought they were just filming a regular film, but it turns out it was part of a bigger operation that kind of caused problems in a government type of thing. I was like, wow, that's crazy. And Julian is kind of like, yo, stay away from this case. But Dylan, being who he is, dives deeper. What was incredible was the fact is he started like kind of looking into things, but anytime Lindsay be like, what are you up to? He's like, oh, no, nothing. Oh, he makes these leaps and bounds, like, oh, checking governments, whether people work with the government, have any military stuff. I was like, what do you know? But he kept her out in the dark, which ultimately kind of backfired on him because she went to the final victim, who's actually like a former MI6 spy who got burned, named Bishop. He's the one that actually recorded. That's what this was all about, because if this filming ever got out, it would have like turned into this whole explosive thing. So he was covering his tracks, killing anyone that had any ties to that recording. So to that film set, and it almost got Lizzie killed because Dylan kept her out of the loop. There's an argument, it's like, well, he did it because he cares about her and he just wanted to keep her separated. But it's also that whole situation that even he comes to realize is like, no, I compartmentalize. Like, with him, when he worked with the CIA, the situation of like keeping your personal life and your work life separated, just because that's just like the name of the game. But he's like, he realizes now like what that does, like that destroys any relationships. That's why he left in the first place, so that he could have his relationship with Andy without having to compromise, without having to keep secrets. And it's like, what does he do? Turn around and does the same thing to his partner here, Lizzie, like who has his back. It's like, I can't work with someone if I can't trust him. And like he comes to realize. So I'm sure he's going to be a lot more forthcoming going forward. Like I said, I'm curious, like, was it 100% just to protect Lizzie, or was there some subconscious level of like, was CIA related? I think it's more so to protect her. Because he didn't want her to get involved in this. That's why he was trying to solve it and get him and Julian to deal with the situation as soon as possible, was for that exact reason, so she wouldn't get involved. So, but I wonder, is on some level, is it also like his CIA like side kind of kicking him, where it's like, no, I have to kind of keep you, like, once again, the whole compartmentalizing thing, plus, it's like keeping secrets anyway. So I mean, but lucky when it was all said and done, luckily they were able to get to Lizzie in time. Obviously, Julian framed everything to be like, yeah, you take out, yep, you're the one that killed Bishop in self-defense. You were the only one here. Lizzie's not easily fooled because she's like, wait, aren't those two different tire tracks? I also love the reason why he was able to track her down. It's like, oh no, cell phone service, but because of Gary's tracker, I was able to find. See, so being super overprotective does help sometimes. Which that was such a sweet thing in this episode, her being worried about. It's like, oh, he's got a tooth being taken out. And obviously Dylan's supposed to be emotional support, but he's kind of sucking at it. It's like, oh, like, look at all this paperwork. Like, I've literally been in worse situations. I've never had to fill out that much paperwork. It's like, oh, look at you. Don't you think it's kind of funny? You're worried about him tooth pulled out, and you're also worried about his ultimate demise or something like that. And she's looking at him like, shut up. And it's just, you see her heart broke. There's even that moment later on when it's like, oh, I'm checking on, I got 2 calls about, Gary. And he's like, oh, I can't share any information about that. And then Lizzie goes, sits down, and she gets up and she's all frantic and everything. I was like, that's so adorable. And then she runs, like, Gary, you're alive. It's like, oh, I just had to pull another tooth. It's like, okay, I don't care. It's like, Gary. I was like, that's so sweet. Obviously, because we already know how important Gary is to her. Like, he's kind of the last tie she has to Charlie, too. Besides just loving him, it's also a reminder of Charlie. That way, I guess, as long as Gary's around, that there's at least some part of Charlie she still has with her. So, like I said, it's just a so sweet thing, which ultimately ended up helping in the case in the long run anyway. Julian's quite the cold customer, too, when the time came, and it was just kind of a face-off between him and Bishop, and just them locking eyes, and we cut away, and we hear the gunshot, so. I'm curious to see, I get the feeling like we'll probably see more of that, especially with the whole situation around Dylan kind of being more, like, his CIA stuff. Like, I'm sure at some point in time that will come up again. Probably more directly involved stuff. This is just kind of like, government agency stuff anyway. We're still like, it is something interesting that Dylan kind of brought up, because the fact of the matter is, it's like we still don't 100% know why Julian left. It's got like, it's kind of got brought up in the first episode. What I forgot to talk about was the fact is that he's like, yeah, you know so much. Like Dylan was like, you know so much about my dad, but I don't know anything about yours. And he's like, yeah, because I'm unlike you. I'm very good. I'm very good at what I do. Like I'm better at this whole situation than you, so that's why you know next to nothing about. I mean, he probably knows Julian, but probably beyond that doesn't know too much. I mean, that might be something that kind of comes up in the episode, in the series. It'd be kind of interesting if one case led to Julian. Not necessarily that he was directly, well, that he's a killer, but things could be painted where it's like, yeah, he's involved in the case. Because that is the aspect that keeps surprising me. It's like, yeah, Lizzie still has not met Julian. He knows about this she knows about this mysterious friend and ally that Dylan has, but beyond that, she doesn't know. I doubt even Andy knows. I guess Julian's kind of like his big kept secret. So still, just as much as like his dad's trying to pull him in, so is Julian. Just kind of like, oh, come work with me, God, come on, it'll be fine, you know. So it's just kind of an interesting situation. Another aspect to this episode was the whole situation with Detective Fucci, who's like, oh yeah, like come over to like barbecue kind of cookout situation. I thought it was going to be a bigger thing just because of that weird awkward. He's like, you know, bring your domestic partner. You mean my husband or what? Yeah, or whatever. I was like, yeah, you know, it's just kind of like he was a little. I thought, I was like, oh, is that going to be a bigger thing? It's like, no, it isn't. It's just the fact is that I guess he was trying to be like PC about it, because he's like, I don't know, I don't want to just assume, like, you know, whatever your situation is. Not that I have a problem with it. I just didn't know how. Like, I think in the long run that's what it was, but I thought it was going to be something bigger. It's like, no, because him and the others loved Andy, because Andy and Dylan are very different, because Andy's very outspoken, whereas Dylan is very kind of like keeps to himself. I think once again, another thing me and Dylan share, it's just because Dylan's upbringing in his particular case. My situation is very different. I'm just kind of a socially awkward person by nature. His situation is because of his upbringing, being gay, his dad's situation being very musical, and just kind of having to hide that away. Like so much of himself he had to keep to himself because of his upbringing and stuff like that. And so it makes it very hard for him to kind of like latch on to people. I did like the whole him and Maria, Detective Fucci's wife, kind of bonding a little bit, because she kind of felt like the same way too. It's like, oh, got mixed up in all this mangling and stuff like that, you know, professional and work life, which is once again something that Dylan brought up, like I've talked about in this episode, is like he kept them separated, and now he kind of has to, with Andy there, he's trying to keep everything kind of good. He was hoping that Lizzie would be there, but she wasn't there, so Andy's kind of the life of the party. Everyone's like, yo, Andy's the best and stuff like that. But like he was trying to make an effort until it was like, oh yeah, like you can change into some swimming trunks, I guess, because they were going to play in the pool and stuff like that, which Andy was doing before. And it's like the moment Dylan heard of that, he was like, wait, what? I guess because he's just not big of a, he's, you know, Andy's more the sports person, so I guess it's kind of like, oh, athletic stuff, no. Oh, getting like, he's like, I'm barely getting comfortable with the whole notion of chit-chatting with people, and now you want me to kind of change into swimming trunks in front of other these people I work with? No. That's where I draw the line. Luckily, Lizzie showed up in time to pull them away from the party, so I guess he lucked out in that. So I thought that was pretty neat. Luckily, at the end, he does take this step forward, because he invites everyone to the bar. So I thought that's kind of a nice touch, kind of building like more like a relationship with the team. I thought was kind of pretty neat. Like I said, overall, both great episodes. I'm very excited to see what the next episode has in store. But also, like I said, I'm very interested to see if more CIA stuff like this kind of comes up. And obviously, will Dylan be a lot more forthcoming in the future? I would assume he has. And I'm so curious of what's going to happen when the time comes when Lizzie and Julian meet face to face. Will it be directly thanks to Dylan? Will it be kind of like he goes out of his way, okay, here's Julian, Lizzie, Julian, Lizzie, or was it be a situation of like, did I say the same thing right there? I don't remember. Once again, I space out sometimes. I do apologize. Or is it just going to be a situation of like a particular case, like I said, potentially leads to them meeting each other like that? I don't know. It'd be kind of, either way, I'd be kind of interested, because it's just like I said, he's Dylan's little secret, which I think is kind of neat. Also, completely forgot about Joan's part of this episode, where she's just kind of like trying to get him to write the book, because it's like, oh yeah, just working with the police. Talk about your spy stories. It's like, no, I can't do that because a lot of those people might still be undercover. I could be jeopardizing their lives. It's like, no, it's fine. We'll just we'll change the names and stuff like that. It's like, that's very interesting. You have a very interesting perspective, Joan. I was super excited at the end when she was kind of like, oh, these are people you work with? Oh, I guess maybe she was going to talk to them so she could get a little dirt on Dylan, some stuff that they could use to kind of like swerve the book. It's interesting. I mean, she's the editor and stuff like that. Or, yeah, she's his editor, right? Or editor slash publisher, agent. I guess she kind of has all those titles because it seems like more like she's the one writing the book rather than Dylan. Dylan's kind of like, oh, I got this. It's like, no. You should do this instead, which is like, I guess, I mean, she kind of has helped get him to where he is right now with this whole situation. So I don't know. I thought that was just a very nice touch. So like I said, very interested to see what goes down in the next episode. And now moving on to the season finale of Deception, a fantastic season finale, back-to-back episodes. So obviously I'm going to be talking about everything as a whole. So I'm just going to be kind of all over the place. The whole situation, it's very interesting. Like, a lot of this season finale played out in certain ways, I thought, but then like kind of tricked me into thinking they weren't playing out those certain ways, and then they did. Obviously, I'll kind of break everything down. First of all, it's interesting. For one, this is our first time actually getting a look at their dad, Sebastian Black. That's kind of interesting. But it turns out he was actually some well-known thief known as William Archer, which is kind of interesting. And I love it because a big part of this season finale is turning Cam's world upside down, because Cam did have because he is the more optimist. When it came to a lot of their upbringing, he looked at things kind of through rose-tinted glasses, whereas you had John, because of his circumstances, kind of looked at things kind of in the real world. He kind of was very pessimistic, but I guess you make the argument real. He was kind of a realist about the whole situation. But we basically find out that this is all about what exactly, like, everything Aleister Black built for them. It turns out that this is all about some great fortune, billions that they stashed away. Each one had a specific treasure that basically opened the way to the vault, essentially. And we end up finding out it leads to a map, which leads to the vault, but still. But what got me was the whole situation of like, oh yeah, she tells John everything, like, oh, like, you had a chance to get me free, but you chose Kay. It's like, you promised that you would do anything, and the moment you had a chance to do anything, you wouldn't do it. I was like, at that moment, I was like, crap, this is literally playing into what I thought. Like, John is going to end up betraying Cam, which he did. But then it's like, nope, he didn't. I was like, yeah, you're in this together. I was like, okay, good. But I was like, that still... It's even messed up because the mystery woman kind of comments on it later on. It's like, yeah, you meant a lot of what you said, whether or not you really want to admit it or not. I'm like, oh, that sucks. Because the whole situation is just kind of, I always feel so bad because it's like, John blames Cam for so much of like what's wrong with his own life. I mean, it's not, because in the grand scheme of things, Cam had the better childhood. Yeah, Cam was kind of forced into the spotlight, but he benefited from the most. John never had a life. He always had to live in the shadows. Yeah, Cam had his struggles, but in John's mind, it's like, I had it worse. I was the son that no one knew existed. It's like, you, at the very least, you got put in a spotlight. People saw you. No one saw me. And, over the years, you can tell that man of, like even from the very beginning, it seems like you could already tell, like, from the very beginning of the series, he resented Cam a lot. And in the grand scheme of things, it kind of, you kind of see why. Like, because he blames him for everything, because it's like, yeah, all this happened because of every life choice Cam's ever made. It's like, Cam was always the favorite. He was always the one their dad put the most time into. And it's like, oh, like, I wouldn't have been in those circumstances in the first place to be caught by the mystery woman if you not forced me to do the trick. I didn't want to do that trick, and you did. And that just, it just sucks that everything kind of played out that way. And it does confirm what I thought, like the whole, Dina situation was about the fact is that he kind of went off with the mystery woman. That's kind of what broke them up, because it's like, oh, do you have a girlfriend? Cameron Black doesn't have a girlfriend. He's like, you're right, Cameron Black doesn't, just because he got tired of just being John, the one no one knows about. It's like, no, I'm gonna take advantage of it. I'm gonna be seen for the first time. If it means just playing Cameron Black for this one night, I'm gonna be seen for once, and kind of live in the essence that is Cameron Black. And it's just kind of just so much went down in this. Obviously, the whole Mike and Dina situation, which I was actually surprised he knew it. So she was like, I got something to say. He's like, yeah, it was you who took it. I was like, wow, you knew. I mean, to be fair, Mike isn't stupid. He's a really good agent. Plus, he knows about magic and stuff like that. Plus, he pieced it together. I'm sure she was easily one of the top suspects, but he didn't want to believe it. So I'm sure he looked at every possible angle just to prove to himself it wasn't her. He probably went out of his way to prove it wasn't her, but couldn't. And he's like, I don't understand why. And what hurts the most is like, so everything you did was for John. And what did it accomplish in the end? Nothing. You got absolutely nothing from it. So it's kind of like, what was the whole point then, And that's kind of sad because now his entire career is potentially up there to be snatched away from him in an instant because of what Dina did. Even if she confessed at this point in time, it's like, no, he would severely get in trouble because he's already put his statement on the record. And if she says something that contradicts that, not only will she go to jail for like 15 years for stealing his badge, he'll lose his job and never be able to work in law enforcement again. So which kind of was like, hey, me and you, we're done. I was like, which understandable. It's like your entire life got turned upside down because of her. I mean, there was in that moment later on when they were kind of working undercover and stuff like that. And you can obviously tell like a lot of their real stuff kind of came through that. Like they were like, it's like, oh, after what you did to me. And it's just like, they're kind of playing into the act still. But obviously, that was a lot of real stuff that was kind of being exchanged without them kind of using the exact words about what happened between them. So I did like that automated, automaton situation. First, the fact of the matter is the box leading to like secret staircase, which led to a secret room. I even love that day in the entire situation. Cameron was kind of a little drunk because he, like I said, the whole aspect of like, yeah, your life got turned upside down. I even love that conversation of like, yeah, dad's just always kind of imposing their will. And he's like, yeah, and Jordan's like, yeah, that's why my dad had me take ballet for like, wasn't it ballet for like 12 years? And everyone just looks at him and Dina's like, yeah, we're not even going to bother just unpackaging all of that. Let's just drink about campus situation for now. I was like, wow, that's interesting. But it also, that whole automated machine, like you step on the wrong one, it throws. I was like, that's some like Indiana Jones like level trap. It's pretty cool. And just how automated that thing was, just throwing the knives and stuff. But I did love the trick and trap and everything, the codex that they used to kind of hide their messages. And the mystery woman kind of getting caught in their trap. I even loved Kay having a gun on Cam and it's like, Cam, what happened to your shoes? And he looks down and she shoots him to shoot at Mitch. He's like, you shot me. She's like, I shot her more. So in the end, it's like, yes, we captured the mystery woman, but you knew she had a lot more at stake. She had more at play. There was a whole kidnapping that foreign diplomat who, that whole situation was pretty neat. Like, 3 missing vehicles turned into one. I was like, that's pretty high tech. Then the whole fake kidnapping situation, because that was all a ploy. I mean, the question is like, because she makes it seem like she didn't take the job because she was like, oh, it'd be too much of an issue. But it's like, did you secretly, like, I mean, it makes me think like, maybe on some level she she knew the details of the job. It's probably that she didn't take the job. She probably legitimately didn't, just because it would just kind of complicate her own situation. Because everything she was doing was for the purposes of building an even bigger wedge between John and everyone else. Because John had very few people. No matter what the circumstances may have been, the only person he had left was Dina, and because of everything that he did, like, she will never forgive him, because the reason why her and Mike had their issue was because of him in the first place. And then there's the whole situation of like, other than that, the only other person he had was Cameron, which all you can see when you look at Cameron is like, all he would be able to see is like the brother that ruined everything. You're the reason it all fell apart. Even a mystery woman uses that against Cameron. It's like, oh yeah, the fact is you want to try and look back on your childhood, make it seem like it was all okay. It's like, no, you're the reason why your brother like had no life. You're the reason why everything basically sucked for him. Which once again sucks that Cameron takes all the blame for that, because that was their dad's fault. It's just from the very beginning, your dad kind of pitted you and John against each other, and it's just kind of sad that you kind of have to suffer. But the thing is, I guess it's because at any point in time, Cam could have walked away, but he basks in the glory just because, once again, because he even calls himself out for it later. It's like, because he wanted to see his dad in positive, like no matter how much of an asshole his dad was, it's like, oh, maybe he'd come and make things better, like everything would turn around, even though it never did. Once again, naive optimism at the very least. And it's just, like I said, I guess that naive optimism just makes John just resent him even more. And then it's like all the promises of like this and that. They ended up saving the diplomat. It was kind of interesting because, like, yeah, Mystery Woman wasn't really all that keen to help until she thought it was John that was in trouble. Because we end up finally getting a lot of context. We find out that Mystery Woman, my thought was like, oh, she must be from a magician family. It's like, no, she comes from a crime family. Her mom is a very good criminal, but she'd often call into one person for help, and that was William Archer, or rather Sebastian Black. That's actually how she met him and got to know about the family. That's how the whole got the place that her and John first met. That's how that all happened. In fact, she was like, oh yeah, like honestly, Sebastian was more of a father to me than I ever really knew. So that's why she latched onto him. And then, you know, when she met John, it just kind of turned her world upside down. But then it's kind of like in a good way. It's just kind of like she felt so good, but then probably kind of felt for the first time like she had it all, almost like a dad figure, someone that she really cares about, John. But his dad came, which is so interesting considering the fact, I guess in retrospect, that's what it was. Because I was like, why did you get so defensive? You apparently act like you never cared about John before, so why this? It's like, okay, I get it. Because if she got too close to John, she would have found out about the whole Cam and John situation and would have destroyed anything. The whole ultimate trick that he was trying to perform is what that was all about, you know? And it's just kind of like, man, that sucked. Because like I said, because it's like, yeah, you've never really cared before. Like I said, I'm curious. Maybe he always thought because he kept him this way, it would, I don't know, you know, being who he was, wasn't just some great magician. He was a criminal. And going back to the conversation of like, maybe they're, you know, your parents imprint onto you what they want for you. Maybe because he was a criminal, he pushed them so hard to be great magicians because he didn't want that life for them, because he wanted something better for them, you know, in his own misguided way. Maybe he tried his best in his own way, but maybe, it just didn't work out, and he just, you know, ended up creating a monster of a situation he didn't realize he was creating, like all this resentment from towards Cam from John. I don't know. They do talk about the fact is that he died, and I still kind of get the inkling like that's not 100% true. I'm sure like he faked his death potentially or something. I don't know. Because that's still kind of like, because even that's kind of a situation that's still not really brought up too much about. Their mom is still kind of an alpha subject. And I forgot to bring this up earlier, was the whole situation with him like not liking bank heists. I was like, oh, is it because of your particular situation? Is that kind of why you did like that? It's like, no, it's not like that. It's because apparently he was involved in a bank heist, which we now know in retrospect. It's like, oh yeah, his dad was behind that. That was so interesting because the guy that was trying to protect Cam was like, yeah, I would have never taken a job if I knew you were involved, because, you know, it's like he was good pals. He worked with Sebastian, so it's like any loyalty he had to Sebastian goes to his sons as well. I wonder, does he know about John? I don't know. Just because you work with them doesn't mean they knew everything. So they probably knew about Cameron. They probably just never knew about John. I mean, I wonder would it have been worked both ways, or I don't know. I mean, at this point in time, everybody knows about John. So what you had that moment, I think it was the first moment in the show where you had both. Well, John and Cam both free and on the same side. Obviously, they've been free before at the same time, but it's like this is the first time that they were free and kind of working together. That was kind of interesting. Also found out that Mystery Woman has a fake contact in. It's like, well, what's the point of that? Why hide both your eyes? Maybe, I guess, by hiding one of her eyes, she makes it so that he didn't recognize her immediately. Like, I don't know what the whole point of that is. Maybe there's more to it than, I mean, to be fair, I guess it fit the trick, and because she already created this narrative of being like, oh, this being such a specific thing about her, maybe there's more to it. I don't know. Like, it just seems weird that you keep that up now. Like, because she puts it back in later on, because we see her with the whole, like, different colored eyes situation later on. So it's like, okay, so why are you still keeping that up? I guess it's just aesthetically. Maybe it's supposed to represent some like yin yang situation. I don't know. I do appreciate earlier in the first episode when they were trying to capture her, Gunter had the thing set to 700. It's like, shouldn't you lower that? Because we don't want her dead. He's like, all right, I'll lower it to 650. And it's like, okay, because we still need to get John out of here. And it just kind of like, which also shows you what kind of person Gunter is to the point. It's like, nah, he's very protective. It's like, nah, lady's got to die after what she's done, tearing apart this family like that. So I also love that Cameron ended up finding out this, and during all of this, it's like, yeah, the whole FBI observer thing doesn't exist. He's like, wait, what? No, wait, you're telling me that's not? He's like, no, you're messing with me, right? You can't tell me that's not a real position. So that kind of sucked. because he's kind of been flashing that around, kind of like, oh yeah, I'm an FBI observer, yeah, this and that. It's like, oh, actually that job title doesn't really exist. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist. No, but still. But the final nail in the coffin for all of this was the fact is that mystery woman cut a deal and ended up she got away, obviously she's going to be locked up, but she eventually, like, everyone knew she'd get away anyway. But at the same time, it's like John would end up going back to prison. And then you have Cam being so upset by it that he wants to leave everything. It's like, okay, they made it very clear at the beginning of the series. Obviously he lied about it to Kay, but it's like, oh, they've been planning a way to break John out of here for a while. And it's like, okay, he's like, I'm sorry about everything that's happened. Like, I'm going to do this. He's like, I'm willing to sacrifice whatever I have to for you. And it's like, sadly, John didn't, I guess it was a little too late because like you had the chance to do whatever you needed to. And so what happened? He's like, I was like, oh man, it's like this sweet moment. Oh, John's not going to let him sacrifice everything. I was like, I guess Cameron's still going to go off on his own. It's like, nope, because that SOB knocks Cameron out and switches codes. I was like, you suck. I was like, I knew it. Hence what I was talking about, the twists and turns. It's like, I knew he'd betray him, but I was like, oh, you didn't betray him. Oh, you ultimately betrayed him. And it's like, once again, I guess in his own warped mind, because for him, it's like they had a connection. For both of them back then, that moment when they met, they were kids, that was the moment that changed everything for them, because like it was for the first time they were happy because they kind of had someone else in their whole messed up family situations. They had each other, and that those 5 days were magical. Like, I guess, considering kind of how messed up their lives are, that's why they latched onto it. Even the whole coin situation is like, you've been going around saying that's your dad's. It's like, no. She's like, I know how important those days were to you. You want to pretend like you don't remember it, but the fact that you held onto that coin is proof that you have thought about it every day, because that coin is mine, not your dad's. And it's like, oh my God. So had he been misremembering that this entire time, or was he trying so hard, like subconsciously, not to think about it? Subconsciously, he was always thinking about it. It's just so interesting. You've been trying so hard to come after this mystery woman, and you knew exactly who she was. You literally been keeping a keepsake, and you've been flipping around your fingers the entire season, and that's crazy to me. But it's so sad, and especially because you have John breaking Kay's heart, because Kay's like, I want to be more. It's like, dude! I was like, dude! It's like, that's what Cam wants too. Because that never came up too, because like, Kay was like, why did you like not turn to Jill over? It's like, we know, and he knows he did it for Kay because he didn't want to betray her, because he cares a lot about her. And that's what pissed, like, I'm sure that's why he did it even more. Like, you could tell even when it was happening, you could tell seeing the condition Kay was in that she cares about Cam, and he knew he was hurting her. I think on some level, maybe John, like, you could tell there was some regret there, but he's like, I gotta do this. I can't, like, if I don't take this chance, I'll never get it again. But I think it's also the fact is that he knew that he was hurting someone that's very important to Cameron. So I think there's that. But for him, it's like, no more promises. All those promises have been broken over and over again. But it's like, let's not forget I guess no matter what the situation is, no matter even if it's a situation of like, the mystery woman is the one that put you in this situation. It's like his family did it first. Cameron existing led to everything, even it's like, oh yeah, what happens when it's all said and done? What did the group think? It's like, oh, well, put Cameron, go back on show. It's like, oh, we his brother John. But like, you could tell that look on John's face. It was like, no, because that's basically falling back into old habits. Like, I just fall behind in the shadow. I just be that person again. Because I wouldn't be John. I'd just be, oh yeah, Cameron's twin brother, John. There'd always be an asterisk with it. It just wouldn't be simple. He could never be him. He would never be able to escape his family and escape Cameron. And that's what the mystery woman is like, yeah, that's what you want the most. Like, you enjoyed all of this, that time we spent together, because that was time you weren't around your brother. Any time you weren't with your brother was actually the happiest, because you didn't have to be smothered by everything he is, everything your father built him into being, And that sucks. And it's definitely going to be interesting going forward with all of this. Like I said, it took a twist, like I said, with the whole mystery woman. Like I said, I figured it seems like it isn't necessarily about revenge in a weird way. It's about love. It's about connection, which, to be fair, I mean, the mystery woman tosses people aside all the time, but maybe, I mean, she has proven that all of this was about, because I thought when she was saying like, oh, I proved my loyalty to FBI, I thought she was going to like her kind of a cat and mouse game where she's like behind bars, but she's still working, you know, like I thought that's what that whole situation was like. Oh, she was going to like plan her next move, and then John still, you know, I thought like, oh, he fought with the idea a little bit more, like he wouldn't be completely sucked over to the dark side, but eventually he would be. I wasn't expecting it to be like instantaneous at the end of the season. Like I said, I knew it was going to happen just because the entire season's been leading to that direction, especially when she found out like, oh wow, the person I met back then wasn't Cameron, that was actually John. He's the one I had that kindred spirit moment with. So she understands him so much in a way no one else can. So they're going to go off and find this vault and stuff like that, all these riches, which, because I think that was kind of like, but I think that's kind of the whole thing she did with Bishop, because I was like, oh yeah, he was like, yeah, I was like, oh, so you're getting all this stuff so you can return it to people? It's like, no, that's not the case. It's got to be like, that's what I thought, but it's like, no, like it's even what Cameron said earlier in the season. It's like, Bishop, she's just lying to you. You think she's kind of like, you know, some revolutionary, but like she's only playing that role because that's the role you want. Once again, who's to say she's not doing the same thing with John? I think she's more sincere, but the fact of the matter is you never know. She could be playing John too, and you know, she's played you all along, but I guess in his mind, like she's the only person. Yes, she's manipulated him, but I guess you could make the argument she's never outright lied to him. So I guess, you know, that makes it a difference between him and his own brother. So I guess going forward, it is just all about gaining these riches, these and just kind of disappearing. I mean, to be fair, crime kind of runs in both of their families. His dad, her mom, which we still don't know the other side of those situations. Her actual dad, his actual mom. So maybe that'd be something that kind of gets brought up in the future. The whole Dina and Mike thing, it looked like they're on good terms potentially. There's always, you know, it's going to be interesting to see whether, I mean, especially going forward from this, like after, when this is all said and done, there's no coming back from this from John. Like part of me wants to think that John is doing this, that this is the long con. There's another possibility I was thinking where it's like, hey, this is just like, he's trying to get close to her, find this treasure or whatever, and then bring her down potentially. Maybe we'll see something come up later on where he'll kind of have a change of heart, but I'm curious to see what exactly happens. I don't know about this whole situation. Because there's still stuff unanswered too, because it was kind of like, so why didn't any of the rich people ever come back for any of the stuff? The money or whatever. It's like, oh yeah, because she says basically, death and other things basically got in the way. So I can only assume maybe Alistair has something to do. I mean, we still don't know much about Alistair either. That might be what those torture chambers were about, like kind of trying to get information out of people. Like maybe they hired him and it's like, oh yeah, like when someone in a group wasn't in line, they sent them to Alistair and he took care of that. Or maybe that was something else entirely. It makes you wonder what's this whole Alistair, like, I mean, it seems like Alistair was kind of connected to that. Wasn't necessarily connected to the criminal world. Maybe it's more like, I mean, for you know, his son, well, grandson to end up like that being Sebastian, it makes you wonder, like, what about their grandfather? That was their great grandfather. What about their grandfather? You know, or was Sebastian the first criminal in their family? I highly doubt that. Even like the mystery woman's like it runs in her family, but it's like maybe it didn't even start with her mom. Even her grandmother or great grandmother was one, whatever the case may be, you know. So I'm curious. I mean, there's going to be the whole situation of like, well, how do you like, you know, it's going to be that whole situation of whether they're identical twins. How do you prove that the one that's actually locked up is actually Cam? That whole situation. Plus, let's not forget, things weren't all that well for John in prison anyway. There was the dude who died, we still haven't gotten back to. I can only, like I said, we know he's being framed for it, but there had to be more to it. But maybe there wasn't. I know they framed him for. I didn't like it. Just in my mind, I still wasn't thinking like that dude Andy actually killed him. I felt like there was someone else. I thought that was kind of the whole point because he was asking Winslow to look into it, which that means Winslow and Cam potentially in the future. That's definitely going to be an interesting situation. But when the truth comes out, like I said, it's burning many bridges. Like I'm sure eventually Cam would get out of prison, but he'll probably only get out temporarily until he only if he can bring his brother back will he get out, or he kind of has to face, because I'm sure the argument will always be made like, oh no, you helped your brother escape. It could be potentially, which I mean, it's like, well, why would I mean, there was some plans and everything that they probably left behind. So it's like you were planning on breaking him out too. Also what this means for him and Kay, like, because all those words she said to John, Cam has no idea. So she probably, who knows if she's going to take those steps forward, which I'm like, wow, I wasn't expecting that to come up like that. I mean, obviously they have a thing for each other. I just wasn't expecting her to be the first one to kind of say that. But it's just kind of like, if I could do anything to save my sister, which is, I think that's kind of what made the whole situation with John hurt even more, because like he probably didn't even know all that stuff about Kay. Maybe he did. Maybe he heard about it from, maybe John heard all that stuff from Cameron. Like I said, like you do see some regret in his eye doing that, because he knew he was hurting someone who was legit. Like no matter what you want to say and spin it, like she was legitimately working her hardest to get you free, and you like screw her and everyone over. Like, and now he's on the run. So I guess I don't know if this is getting renewed for a second season. I really hope so, because I'd love to see what they do with the second season, especially continuing this on with John and her on the run. Like, are they going to have pick up other allies? Is it just going to be them against the world? Because that's going to be the hardest thing, because Cameron, like, she's already a very smart criminal, but the fact of the matter is, having John's help, John knows everything in Cameron's playbook. He would know exactly how to take Cam down, like counter anything Cam has planned. So plus, this would also mean that Team Deception would have to go up against him too. And like I said, that'd be a hard pill to swallow. But after everything he did, I don't know if they'd be willing to forgive him. So I'd be interested to see what they would do with the second season. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good